Start recording. Stop recording. Button. Voiceover off.
In a previous post, I had indicated that my mother had passed away last week. I also said that I was going to give a short testimony regarding as to who my mother was. My mother was a fantastic woman of God. And she was, as my daughter put on her Facebook post, almost powerful. I'm not saying that she was close to being a God or anything like that. No, I'm just saying that in the spirit, she knew the authority that Jesus gave her. And she used that authority to ask many times over many things of him through prayer. And many times I heard her praying to God about me. My mom became a believer in Jesus Christ back in 1980. And she never really wanted to become a Christian because she was content in her Catholic faith. And the reality is that she realized that being a Catholic was not what Jesus wanted her to be. And the only reason she came to Jesus was because she had a co-worker who was a believer back then. And I remember as a child, my mom telling me to tell her when she knocked on the door, let her know that I'm not here. And that happened several times over until my mom one day decided, okay, I'm going to listen to her. And she did. And she never looked back. Period. My mother was a fantastic woman of God for the last 40 years. She was made fun of and mocked by her friends and family who were Catholics, calling her names, thinking she was crazy. But you know what? My mom never did care. As a matter of fact, on the contrary, she prayed for them too. If you're reading this and you're a Catholic and you're a friend or family of my mom, she prayed for you, even though you made fun of her. If you still don't get it, don't blame her when the time comes. Because she did all she could to pray for your soul. What you do with it is your business. My mother was what everybody calls a prayer warrior. She knew how to pray. Many times I heard her pray to God in a pleading, yet demanding, yet expectant voice. She was an amazing woman. When I went through the darkest time of my life, she was there for me, even though I didn't appreciate it. She heard me when nobody else would. None of my family ever wanted to hear about the struggles that I was going through. None of my friends did either. But she did. She took the time to listen to me. And there were a couple of times that I broke out crying in front of her. It didn't matter to her, but it did hurt her to know what I was going through. She cared for me and my daughter tremendously. She would call on a weekly basis to see if we needed anything, especially money. Being on disability benefits, it's not easy, especially when you're taking care of two people. And those of you who know my daughter, don't judge her. You don't know what's going on. My mother didn't. She never judged me or my daughter as to the lifestyle that we lived, which wasn't much. She just wanted to make sure we had everything and went without. It didn't go without. That was so important to her. See, what I found interesting is this. When I needed money, all I had to do was ask. And she'd send it to me. See, the strange thing about it is that my mother, like me, lived on Social Security benefits. In other words, she made less than any of my family combined. Yet she gave more than all of them combined. Because she cared. She knew what was needed. She knew my struggles. But even more importantly, she knew that God would replenish what she spent on me many times over. She never worried about finances. She took the time out to take care of me, even when I was in my 50s. She knew my struggles. Can't say the same thing about the rest of my family. They were too busy living their lives. So be it. Like I said, my mom passed away last week. And I kind of had been expecting this to happen for about 2-3 weeks now, because her health had deteriorated. I was calling Sunday with the advice that I should go visit her, so I immediately left Monday morning. And on the back of my mind, it was always that I needed to let her know that my daughter and I were going to be fine. It was so important for her to know that we were going to be fine. So we decided to pay her a visit as soon as we got to Houston, about an hour or so after we settled in. And never have I ever been so happy to be blind, because I know without a doubt that I could not handle seeing my mom in the condition that she was in. I was very surprised to hear that she was breathing shallow, so shallow. She was taking breaths about every 5 to 10 seconds. If you ever monitor your breathing, I don't have to tell you, that's not the way we are supposed to do it. So I knew she was in her last days. While I was there with her, I went up to her and I said, "Hey, Mom, you can go home now. Megan and I are going to be fine. Because of what you taught me in the last 5 years of what it's like to be a real Christian, the Lord has rewarded me for it. So you can go be with Jesus, enter the kingdom, and don't worry about us. Keep praying for us, but don't worry," I told her. "You can go now." I gave her a kiss, and I left her alone. You see, why I'm telling you this is because when I was speaking to her, her breathing increased just slight enough to notice that she heard everything I said. My fiance Mary told me that when her husband died, and she'd walk into his room, and she started talking to him, she could hear his heart rate increase on the monitors, even though he wasn't responding to her. She says that many times over, people who are in the same situation, even though they cannot respond, they always hear. I strongly believe that my mom did the same thing. She heard what I said. It made me realize that even up to the last hours, she was still praying to Jesus on behalf of me. She didn't stop praying for me, ever. And I can guarantee you that she didn't stop praying for any members of my family. She never stopped praying for any of those who made fun of her for being a Christian. She continued praying. She continued praying to the last, because she knew the power of prayer. She knew what it meant. She never stopped. We went back to the hotel room with the understanding that my sister should call me if my mom does go home. Now, being blind, I have settings on my phone where notifications and different things are read out to me since I can't see them. It was around midnight, and I heard my phone go, say, "New message from Imelda Rodriguez. Imelda Rodriguez is my younger sister. It read, "Looks like Mom has gone home." I immediately stood up on my bed. And I wanted to be sure that I heard right. So I asked Siri to read my text messages. And Siri said, "There are no new text messages." And I thought to myself, how can that be? I just got a message saying that looks like my mom has gone home. So I went into my messages manually, went to where my sister's name was, and I went through those text messages, and there was no text message there. It was at that point that the phone rang in my hotel room, and it was my sister telling me that Mom had gone home. And I hung up. I said, okay. I went back to bed, got up the next morning, went over to my sister's house, and we were talking, and I said to her, "Yeah, I got your text message." She goes, "I never sent you a text message." I said, "Yeah, I know. That's kind of strange because I heard my phone tell me that you had sent me one." She said, "No, I never did." "You're more than welcome to look at my phone. You're not going to find a text message from my sister there." I strongly believe that it was the Holy Spirit telling me in a nice, soft way, saying, "Your mother's come home to be with me." You see, it was so important for my mother that I be okay, that she waited to see me and Megan, my daughter, before she went home. She never stopped praying for me. She never gave up. You know, if you're listening to this or watching this, whatever it is that you're doing, and you're skeptical about what I just said, that's your business. I believe the reason that you like to be skeptical is because you don't want to surrender your life to Jesus, especially you who are religious types. You know who I'm talking about. That's your choice. But the one thing I learned from my mom is to continue praying for you. Our days are numbered. The current situation that we're all going through right now proves it. But if you still want to listen to this and not believe in God, that's on you. Because when the time comes, you're going to want to believe in God, but it will be too late. That is why my mother prayed for everybody. She prayed that I be saved. And I did become saved about 2 years after she did because I saw the transformation in my mom. She was a Catholic prior to that. Just like pretty much every other Catholic, going to church, being all pious, and then living a sinful life. It wasn't until she became a real Christian, not a religious Christian, not a Catholic Christian, but a real Christian, that she turned her life back on sin. Now, she wasn't perfect, but she did everything to try to be as sinless as possible. She went through struggles, but she never turned her back on Jesus. That's the one thing I can say about her. I don't know how she did it because I know I did. But she never did turn her back on Jesus. She went on and on and on. The result? 3 children that became to Jesus. One whose children, her oldest daughter, whose children have all come to Jesus, and the majority of their children have come to Jesus. I have a daughter who's with Jesus. All because my mother prayed for all of us, and she never stopped. You don't want to believe this is true? You don't want to believe about the text message? You don't want to believe that God exists? That's up to you. But you know what? My mother can prove you wrong 10 times over just by the life she led and by the fact that she waited till I told her that I was fine before she went home. She let her faith continue to be in her until her last breath. And I know without a doubt that Jesus told her, it's time to come home, good and faithful servant.
Voiceover on. YouTube. Back. Button. Camera chooser. Back. Button. Back. But camera stop recording. Button.